Welcome to the PD Pet Care Vlogs. I'm Dr. Cath Watson, and today I've been asked to talk to you about the benefits and challenges of becoming a vet. This is something I've been doing for about 23 years now, and I've had a wonderful career that's given heaps of opportunities. However, it's also come with a number of challenges that perhaps I didn't understand that well before I qualified to get into vet school or even applied. So first of all, I want to cover some of the pros, many of which you'll know. Obviously you get to hang out with animals all day. That can be a pro, can be a con, but mostly it's a pro. But every day is different, and it comes with lots of challenges, many of which can be good challenges. But it also means multitasking, so lots of opportunities to stretch your skills there. The degree itself obviously takes 5 years and is pretty challenging, but realistically getting through the degree is probably the easy part. They call it practicing for a reason, because you never really stop learning, challenge yourself, growing. But it is a hugely valuable degree that gives you lots of opportunities, not just within clinical practice, which is mostly what I'll stick to here because that's what I know best, but the degree really gives you huge opportunities because it's essentially a degree in problem solving and allows you to enter so many different arenas as a result. Being a veterinarian also is essentially having the privilege to be in a position of trust. We're entrusted with the care of the animals. We're also entrusted with essentially doing our best for the people that live with those animals as well. So it's all about trying to find the best outcome for everybody there. So it can be hugely fulfilling, rewarding, stimulating, entertaining. It's also generally a great opportunity to work with a team of hugely dedicated and devoted people who are all aiming really for the same outcome, which is the best outcome for the animal and ideally for the people caring for that animal as well. However, the job does come with some downsides and they can be significant, so it's worth considering them well in advance. First of all, our patients can't talk, so we're hugely reliant on the information that the people that come with those animals tell us, and that's not always going to be that accurate. So then we're also reliant on what the animals are going to tell us, which obviously means it's a pretty hands-on job. That can come with the risk of being bitten, kicked, scratched, peed on, pooed on, all those other delightful things. But also many of those animals are hugely accepting of the help that we're trying to give them, so it's not all bad on that front. It does usually involve some quite long hours, and in many cases, particularly outside of major cities, does usually have an after hours requirement to the job as well. That can be quite disturbing to your home life. You have to get used to a phone ringing in the middle of the night, disturbing your sleep. It can involve some quite long hours at late hours of the night or early hours of the morning as well, in quite stressful situations. So obviously learning to manage your work-life balance and making sure that you do have time outside of work, outside of the veterinary environment, is really, really important. Probably one of the biggest downsides for me personally has been feeling like you're in a constant state of negotiation. So while we are, in theory, treating the animal in front of us, actually we're having to also treat the clients that are in front of us in terms of having to negotiate what they want out of it versus what's best for the animal, what it's going to cost versus what they can afford, and therefore what's the best middle ground, what's going to give us the best outcome for the animals. And that can be a real emotional roller coaster at times, because while the majority of people that we deal with are lovely and also want the best for the animal, for some people the best for the animal can mean that they take it out on us, and that can be particularly around finances. So there can be a bit of emotional blackmail going on there, which is something that we all have to learn to deal with and manage. But the other side of it is that irrespective of whether talking veterinary medicine, human medicine, none of us are perfect, so mistakes do happen. And obviously getting into veterinary medicine tends to make you a high achiever. Therefore, we don't like failing. In fact, I don't know too many people who like failing, to be fair. But the reality is mistakes do happen. And not necessarily because we've done anything particularly bad, but as I said at the start, we're trying to have that balance between working out what we've been told by the clients, what the animal's telling us, and then what's really happening, but also trying to manage through that negotiation of what tests or surgeries, whatever's needed, what we can do versus what can be afforded. So sometimes we don't always get the outcome that we'd like, and sometimes the outcomes are just plain unexpected. So managing that level of failure, which fortunately doesn't happen that often, and often the successes make up for it, which is great, but it does end up putting quite a big emotional load on vets. And unfortunately, as a result of that, we know that the suicide rate within the veterinary profession is relatively high. So don't want to dwell on that, but obviously there are some good sides and some bad sides to the job. I don't regret ever having trained as a vet, and obviously 23 years later I'm still working as a vet, so clearly the good sides have outweighed the bad, but it is worth being aware that there are some downsides to the job as well.